Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that's honestly a bit terrifying. We're looking at why the deceptive calm in today's oil markets is actually masking a massive structural threat to the global economy. I mean, you look at the news right now, right? Oil prices seem totally normal, stock markets are doing their thing, and governments are acting like everything is completely under control. But that is a really dangerous illusion. We're going to break down the actual physical realities of global energy supply and show you why this crisis is already far, far worse than it looks on the surface. So let's just jump right into the central mystery here. If shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, which is literally one of the world's absolute most critical energy choke points, has basically ground to a complete halt, why on earth haven't we seen record-breaking prices at the pump yet? Like, why isn't there immediate global panic in the financial markets? It seems like this massive contradiction, doesn't it? Part 1. The illusion of calm. Let's get into it. You really have to think of the market as a giant iceberg right now. Up on the surface, everything looks totally fine. Traders are just assuming a quick fix, so they're pricing in a swift reopening of shipping routes. But underneath the water, completely out of sight, the physical reality is this compounding disaster. Production is actively being cut, coastal storage is completely maxed out, and shipping is at an absolute standstill. You see, the real danger isn't just the headline price ticking across your screen every morning. It's the invisible structural damage happening deep, deep within the physical supply chain. Markets right now are reacting to pure hope, completely ignoring the mechanical, cold, hard reality of what actually happens when oil simply cannot move. Now, sure, governments are relying heavily on emergency buffers at the moment to soften the blow. They're drawing down existing inventories, squeezing out whatever temporary spare capacity they can find, desperately rerouting through alternative pipelines, and releasing strategic emergency reserves. But listen, these stopgaps are just that. They're temporary. You absolutely cannot permanently replace missing Gulf supply with emergency measures. Eventually, those buffers, they run out. Which brings us to part 2, the hidden storage crisis. The physical reality on the ground is incredibly stark. According to independent shipping data, in the entire month of April, a mere 191 vessels crossed the Strait of Hormuz. Just 191. Now compare that tiny 191 to 3,000 vessels. That is how many typically pass through every single month before this conflict started, carrying around 15 million barrels per day. Going from 3,000 all the way down to fewer than 200, that is a stunning, historic collapse that completely reshapes global trade. And here's the immediate problem. Because those ships aren't moving, the oil literally has nowhere to go. It just backs up into coastal locations like Kharg Island. Without tankers to constantly take it away, those massive storage tanks fill up incredibly fast. We're talking about countries like Iran having maybe 12 to 24 days, tops, before their storage capacity is 100% maxed out. And the direct alarming result of that? An estimated 9.1 million barrels per day of crude production had to be physically shut in across the Gulf by April. It's simple math, really. When storage is completely full, producers across Iraq, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Kuwait literally cannot keep pumping. They have to stop. Now for part 3, the physics of oil wells. This is where it gets really serious. This whole situation triggers a catastrophic chain reaction. First, the export routes get blocked. Second, coastal storage hits maximum capacity. But remember, an oil well isn't just a simple faucet you can turn off in your kitchen. It's driven by massive underground natural pressures. So step 3, that backed up oil sends massive physical back pressure all the way down to the wellhead, which leads to the final, fatal step, permanent reservoir damage. So when that immense pressure hits, you suffer what the industry calls wellhead destruction. The back pressure actually forces sediment to separate and violently mixes water into the reservoir itself. It basically ruins the extraction mechanics, meaning even if the Strait of Hormuz magically reopened tomorrow morning, global supply cannot just instantly return to normal. Experts are actually warning that if this pressure continues to build, up to half of an entire nation's operational fields, like Iran's 78 operating fields, could be damaged irreparably. Just think about that. We are talking about permanently taking millions of barrels out of the global system for good. This isn't just a logistical headache anymore. It is a permanent structural deficit. Moving right along to part 4, the global commodity contagion. Because the chokehold at Hormuz goes way, way beyond just crude oil. It cuts off an astonishing 50% of the world's seaborne trade in sulfur. It also blocks nearly a third of liquefied petroleum gas, along with critical supplies of LNG, chemicals, and roughly 10% of the world's aluminum. The ripple effect here is just huge. And here is exactly why this matters to you directly. Trapped sulfur means farmers are going to face soaring fertilizer costs. Missing crude means airlines are suddenly paying drastically more for jet fuel, and manufacturers are going to face severe aluminum and chemical shortages. And ultimately, expensive diesel, which is the absolute lifeblood of farms and supply chains, translates directly into much, much higher grocery bills for your family. Finally, we reach part 5, from prices to true shortages, the very bottom of the iceberg. When the world actually runs out of physical fuel, governments can't just throw money at the problem. Subsidies cannot fix a physical shortage. In fact, and this is absolutely crucial, subsidizing a true shortage only makes the crisis worse. Why? Because it keeps consumer demand dangerously high exactly when the lack of supply dictates that demand desperately needs to fall. Goldman Sachs recently mapped out their Q4 expectations, and it's pretty telling. Their base case assumes oil at $90 a barrel, assuming things kind of normalize. But their disruption case warns it could easily average $120 if physical production capacity is permanently damaged. And remember, the real pain in refined products, like the diesel that runs our trucks and trains, will be much, much sharper than that. When we hit true physical shortages, we aren't just complaining about paying a few extra bucks at the pump. No, we are dealing with widespread canceled flights because jet fuel supplies are incredibly tight. We're looking at halted factory output, heavily delayed global shipping, and severe emergency rationing of diesel across the entire supply chain. It's a massive domino effect that crushes business margins, disrupts food distribution, and threatens emergency backup systems across the globe. So I want to leave you with this chilling question to really think about. What exactly happens to our modern world when these temporary emergency buffers inevitably run completely dry? When the strategic reserves are empty, the spare capacity is totally exhausted, and the true devastating scale of the permanent wellhead damage is finally revealed, the calm we see today is just an illusion. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep your eyes on the data, and please, never stop questioning the surface level